In the gleaming lobby of the Meridian Crown Hotel, a woman in a Navy housekeeping uniform moved quietly along the marble floor, polishing each tile with practiced precision. Her name was Amara Lewis, and for the last 6 years, she had worked as an invisible figure in the backdrop of opulence, dusting chandeliers, scrubbing toilets, wiping away the fingerprints of wealth. But on this particular morning, as sunlight streamed through the glass walls, something disrupted the rhythm of her routine. Her cell phone buzzed softly in her pocket. Normally, Amara wouldn't dare answer during her shift. It was one of Supervisor Hastings' golden rules. But this wasn't just any number flashing on her screen. It was Langston University, the one she'd applied to 6 times for a master's program in comparative linguistics. Hands trembling, Amara ducked behind one of the grand pillars, far from the curious eyes of guests. "Yes, this is Amara Lewis," she whispered. A warm voice answered her, in fluent Flemish. Without missing a beat, Amara replied in perfect accent, explaining her concern about a delayed motivation letter. Her words flowed effortlessly, each syllable shaped by years of academic obsession and unacknowledged brilliance. What she didn't realize was that just across the lobby, Charles Brighton, the elusive billionaire founder of the Meridian Crown chain, had just walked in with Supervisor Hastings. And he had stopped in his tracks. A black cleaning staff member. Speaking fluent Flemish. With near-native precision. Amara ended the call hastily the moment she noticed their eyes on her. "Lewis. In my office. Now." Hastings' voice cut through the quiet like a blade. The walk down to the administrative basement felt like descending into a courtroom. Hastings wasted no time, you know the rules. No phones on duty. And talking, what was that, French? Flemish, Amara replied instinctively, then immediately regretted correcting her. "I don't care if it's Elvish. You embarrassed this hotel in front of Mr. Brighton. You want to act like a diplomat, you can do it in the convention center bathrooms for the next 3 months." The punishment was cruel and calculated. That assignment meant double cleaning duties after late-night conferences, with no overtime pay. As she left the office, Amara held back tears. She had worked relentlessly for 6 years while clutching a degree from Howard College of Languages, applying for countless internal roles, only to be told, "You're not quite the right fit." That night, in a shared apartment above a noisy laundromat, Amara stared at her framed diplomas and wept. Not from weakness, but from frustration. She wasn't just cleaning floors. She was watching years of hope fade under the fluorescent lights of privilege. But the next day, everything would change. Because someone had been watching. And they were about to call her upstairs, not to punish her. But to finally ask, "Who are you really?" The following morning, Amara Lewis woke early, her uniform freshly pressed, her posture upright with determination. Whatever punishment she had to endure, she would face it head-on. She was tired of crying in silence. If she was going to be punished, she'd do it with grace. As she arrived at the hotel lobby, ready for her reassigned duties in the convention center bathrooms, something unexpected happened. The front desk phone rang, and Jennifer, the head receptionist, glanced up from her monitor. "Amara Lewis," she called out. "Human Resources would like to see you. Right away." Amara blinked, startled. HR. They were housed on the top floor, near the executive suites, territory she and her colleagues never entered. She stepped into the gold-trimmed elevator, surrounded by executives in suits, their conversation floating around stock options and acquisitions. She remained silent, clutching her cleaning cart keychain like a lifeline. "Lewis," said a sharp but not unkind voice as she entered HR. Mr. Dwyer, the HR director, motioned to a seat. "Please wait here." A few minutes later, she was led into an office far grander than she'd imagined. Charles Brighton, CEO and founder of Meridian Crown Hotels, stood behind a glass-topped desk. On it was a manila folder, open. "Miss Lewis," he said, with a voice like smooth gravel. "Yesterday, I overheard you speaking Flemish. I asked HR for your file. He tapped the folder. Honors degree in linguistics from Howard College. Fluent in Flemish, Mandarin, Spanish, French, and Korean. 6 years in cleaning. I have to ask, why? Amara straightened her back. I applied for 47 positions in the hotel's international relations and guest experience departments. I was either ignored or rejected. I submitted 12 internal transfer requests. None approved. Most were routed through Supervisor Hastings or Mr. Rollins, Director of Guest Operations. Brighton scribbled those names on a notepad. His eyes darkened. Interesting. Mr. Rollins constantly complains about our lack of multilingual staff for international guests. He walked around the desk and handed Amara a printout. Tomorrow begins our Global Commerce Conference. Dutch and Chinese delegates will be attending. I need someone fluent in both cultures and languages. Amara blinked. You want me to clean for them? Brighton chuckled. No. I want you to be our international guest liaison, temporarily. Effective immediately. Salary starts at $5,000 per week. Her breath caught. That was more than she made in 3 months. Why me? She asked quietly. Because I saw what no one else did. Because you have what this hotel desperately needs. And because I'm starting to suspect there's something very wrong happening inside my own company. Later that morning, wearing a professional navy blazer and a staff badge granting full access to the hotel's executive areas, Amara stepped into the elevator. As fate would have it, the doors opened to reveal Supervisor Hastings. Her face blanched. What are you doing on this floor? She demanded. Amara gave her a professional smile. Working, Ms. Hastings. I've been appointed international guest liaison at Mr. Brighton's request. The woman's jaw tightened. That's impossible. You don't have the degree in linguistics from Howard. Fluent in 6 languages, including Mandarin and Flemish. All in my personnel file, Amara replied calmly. Which you've had access to for 6 years. She walked past Hastings, head held high. In the HR office, Amara met Carla Benson, a newly hired HR analyst. I've been wondering about your file since I started here 3 months ago, Carla whispered. Your qualifications stood out. I asked Mr. Rollins, and he dismissed my questions. Carla processed the official promotion paperwork herself. That afternoon, as Amara reviewed materials for the conference, something disturbing caught her attention. The translated Mandarin documents were full of inaccuracies, some bordering on offensive. If left uncorrected, they could cause serious diplomatic embarrassment. She spent the next 3 hours reworking the translations, restructuring the partnership proposals and welcome letters to reflect proper etiquette. Brighton walked in silently and watched her work. These corrections. How did you know? The original version used language inappropriate in formal Chinese business settings, Amara explained. Brighton narrowed his eyes. Rollins swore he hired a top-tier agency. We paid them $50,000. He didn't check credentials. Whoever translated these knows the language, not the culture. The next morning, as the conference kicked off, Amara moved effortlessly among international guests. Switching between Dutch and Mandarin, solving misunderstandings, and smoothing formal introductions. Mr. Rollins, watching from the sidelines, approached during a break. Impressive, Miss Lewis, he said, smiling tightly. Thank you, she replied, coolly. Interesting how my fluency in Mandarin was ignored, especially when the hotel spent tens of thousands for faulty translations. I never saw your resume, Rollins offered. I received confirmations for every application. Including your own acknowledgments of receipt, she said, showing him email receipts on her tablet. What she didn't say was that Carla from HR had uncovered something more damning. Rollins had approved contracts with a translation firm owned by his niece, who had no credentials in formal Mandarin. She charged premium rates and delivered subpar results. On the third day of the conference, a Dutch delegate recognized Amara. "Wait. Aren't you the author of that article on linguistic nuance in cross-cultural business?" Amara flushed. "Yes. I've cited your work twice," he exclaimed. "You belong at a university, not hidden behind hotel linens." Brighton, watching from afar, clenched his jaw. He had already ordered a deeper investigation into hiring practices. That afternoon, Carla delivered a damning report: repeated rejection of highly qualified non-white candidates, especially women. Inflated contract payments to vendors tied to certain executives. Brighton flipped through the documents with growing rage. Then, Mr. Rollins walked in, oblivious. "Dutch guests are asking about inconsistencies in the documents," he muttered. "Lewis must have," Brighton cut him off coldly. "Spare me. I've reviewed 6 years of evidence. You'll find your termination papers with HR, effective immediately." Rollins paled. "You can't fire me over this girl, she's Dar." "Amara Lewis," Brighton said, voice steely. "PhD in linguistics. Fluent in 6 languages. And you buried her resume for 6 years to enrich your niece." The room fell silent. "Amara," Brighton said, turning to her, "I want you to help me rebuild this system, starting today." And just like that, a quiet woman who had scrubbed toilets for 6 years became the face of a revolution. The morning sun bathed the Grand Meridian's expansive lobby in a golden hue, but the atmosphere within was thick with anticipation. Word of Amara Lewis's remarkable performance at the Global Commerce Conference had begun to circulate, not just among the staff but also among guests and corporate partners. Though whispers buzzed through the marble corridors, most of the staff still treated Amara with the cautious curiosity usually reserved for sudden celebrity. Few knew the full story. Fewer still understood the storm that was quietly gathering. Amara, however, was far from basking in the limelight. After her sudden promotion to international guest liaison, she found herself plunged into meetings, language preparation, cultural briefings, and, most importantly, correcting catastrophic translation work that could have sunk the conference before it began. 3 days into the event, she was reviewing Mandarin legal phrases for a contract when a soft knock interrupted her concentration. "Come in," she called, assuming it was Carla from HR. Instead, it was Charles Brighton, CEO of Meridian Crown Hotels. He entered without preamble, a thick folder tucked beneath his arm. His expression was unreadable. "I want to show you something," he said, setting the folder down. Inside were 6 years' worth of resumes, application logs, interview assessments, and internal transfer requests. Amara's name appeared dozens of times. "These were pulled from HR's archived records," he explained. "Every one of your applications. All marked as unsuitable. But each paired with a rejection template signed by either Hastings or Rollins." He flipped a page. "Here's the kicker, this one. The interview was cancelled 5 minutes before the scheduled time. Reason given: candidate no-show." Amara leaned forward. "I was there. I checked in with the receptionist. She confirmed me." Brighton nodded grimly. "And Rollins marked you absent." The air between them grew tense. "This isn't just negligence," Amara murmured. "This is obstruction." Brighton leaned back, steepling his fingers. "It's deeper than that. I've initiated a confidential internal audit. And I need your help." "My help?" "I want you to assist Carla in a comprehensive review of hiring practices over the past 5 years. We need a report ready before the board convenes next Friday. And Amara," he paused. "I want transparency. If there's rot, we cut it out, completely." Amara agreed. For the next 3 days, she worked with Carla in HR, poring through mountains of digital and paper records. Together, they discovered a damning pattern. Highly qualified non-white candidates, especially women, were consistently filtered out during preliminary screening. Many of their resumes never made it past middle management. Carla gasped one evening while scanning a vendor list. "Look at this," she whispered, pointing to an entry labeled Lexilingua Translations LLC. "What about it?" Amara asked. "It's registered under Ashley Rollins, Director Rollins's niece. She's listed as lead translator for our international events." A few clicks later, they confirmed it. Ashley had no formal qualifications in Mandarin or Dutch. Yet her company had billed Meridian over $300,000 in 2 years, at double market rates. Amara slumped into her chair. "So I was scrubbing floors while they handed contracts to family. Incredible." They gathered screenshots, invoices, HR evaluations, and dozens of transfer requests like Amara's, all rejected or ignored. The deeper they dug, the worse it got. Then came the final piece. One of Carla's interns, while investigating an HR data anomaly, found a filtered tag in the system, "Unfit Cultural Fit, FLAGA." It had been used over 200 times. Every recipient was either Black, Hispanic, or of Asian descent. "This isn't just about you," Carla whispered. "This is systemic." The next morning, Amara and Carla presented their findings to Brighton in his office. His face darkened with each page. "How long do you think this has been going on?" he asked. "Longer than we can prove," Amara said. "But the evidence we have covers the last 6 years." Brighton tapped his pen against the folder. "We go public. With full transparency. But I need one more thing from you. Anything. I want you at the executive summit next Monday. Present the report. Yourself." Amara froze. "You want me to present? Who better? You lived it. You uncovered it. And you speak for every unseen employee this company ever ignored." She swallowed hard but nodded. "I'll do it." The following Monday, the executive summit convened in the hotel's grand ballroom. Nearly 200 regional managers, department heads, board members, and international partners filled the seats. The tension was palpable. Brighton took the podium first. "Good morning. Before we begin our scheduled briefings, we have something important to share, something overdue." He turned and nodded toward Amara. She stepped up, holding the thick report in both hands. Her voice was steady, her words precise. "For 6 years, I worked in housekeeping. I also hold a PhD in linguistics. Fluent in 6 languages. Applied for nearly 50 internal roles, denied every time." A ripple passed through the crowd. She continued, walking them through the patterns: biased hiring practices, crony vendor contracts, inflated translation costs, and the misuse of racially coded tags like "unfit cultural fit." Charts and screenshots appeared on the large screen behind her. By the time she concluded, the room was dead silent. Brighton returned to the podium. "Effective immediately, we are launching a full investigation across all departments. Any manager found complicit will be terminated. In addition, we are appointing Dr. Amara Lewis as Acting Director of Talent Equity and Multilingual Strategy." Thunderous applause broke out. Some rose to their feet. Hastings and Rollins, seated at the rear, looked shell-shocked. But it wasn't over yet. That afternoon, Brighton called an emergency board session. He presented evidence of fraud in vendor contracts, abuse of authority, and discriminatory hiring codes. Within an hour, Rollins was formally terminated. Hastings was placed on indefinite suspension pending investigation. By sunset, Amara stood in her new office, an elegant corner room on the 28th floor, complete with skyline view and her name etched in gold on the door. She placed a framed photo of her mother on the desk. "I did it, Mama," she whispered. "And now I'm going to do it for others." Amara Lewis adjusted the collar of her blazer as she stepped into the executive suite conference room. This time, she wasn't there to clean. She was there to lead. The fourth day of the Global Commerce Conference began with buzz and excitement. International clients praised the seamless coordination and professional courtesy they received. The VIP translation services now earned glowing reviews. Thanks to Amara's late-night revisions. Delegates from China, the Netherlands, and Belgium had begun discussing preliminary deals that exceeded hotel expectations. But Amara had something else on her mind. The folder in her hand contained undeniable proof that Director Rollins had, for years, funneled translation contracts to his niece's firm. Proof that the firm had charged triple market rates and delivered low-quality work. Proof that qualified internal candidates, especially women of color, were deliberately excluded from promotions. In Bryden's office, Amara laid the evidence before him. These are scanned contracts, payment receipts, and comparison charts Carla helped me compile. There's also an email from Peiyang University confirming that Ashley Rollins was never certified in Mandarin. Bryden's face hardened. And this? Amara played a recorded conversation. Rollins' voice was clear, she's just a cleaning lady. Let her mop the lobby and feel important. This position needs someone with pedigree. Bryden stood. This changes everything. 30 minutes later, in the main auditorium filled with all hotel department heads, Bryden took the stage. At his side stood Amara, holding a clicker. Today, we acknowledge a failure in our hiring systems, Bryden began. But more than that, we celebrate the beginning of change. Let me introduce Dr. Amara Lewis, whose insights this week saved us from a costly and culturally damaging disaster. Applause. Hesitant from some, enthusiastic from others, especially from the housekeeping team at the back. Amara clicked to the next slide. It showed a hiring bias heat map, white boxes for accepted applicants, red for rejected. A sea of red clustered around applications from people of color. 12 internal applications, she said calmly. 12 rejections. 0 feedback. And yet I stood here all along. More slides followed, inflated vendor payments, falsified credentials, and direct quotes from discriminatory emails. Bryden took over. Effective immediately, Director Rollins is terminated for cause. Supervisor Hastings is suspended pending further review. We are conducting a full audit of hiring and vendor practices. The room buzzed. Whispers turned into nods. The back row cheered softly. Then Bryden smiled. Dr. Lewis has agreed to lead our new diversity and language inclusion program. She will serve as Global Communications Liaison, effective today. Amara inhaled deeply. Her knees felt weak but her spirit soared. In the days that followed, she would help interview sidelined employees, redesign the internal transfer process, and oversee partnerships with real, credential translation firms. But at that moment, as she stepped down from the podium, the applause became thunderous. A janitor clapped the loudest, tears in her eyes. Amara gave her a small nod. She knew exactly how it felt to be invisible. 3 days after the Global Commerce Conference concluded, the atmosphere at Meridian Crown hotels remained tense. Though contracts were signed and international guests praised the hospitality, the internal storm was only beginning. Amara Lewis stood in the executive suite on the 32nd floor, now repurposed as her temporary office. From her window, she could see the city skyline stretch endlessly, a stark contrast to the supply closets and mop rooms she had once been confined to. The weight of responsibility on her shoulders was immense, but so was the quiet satisfaction in her chest. She had become more than a liaison. Charles Bryden, the CEO, had asked her to join the new Diversity and Ethics Review Committee, tasked with rooting out discriminatory practices and rebuilding the internal talent pipeline. Amara knew it wouldn't be easy. She called Carla Benson, the HR analyst who had helped uncover the suppressed resumes and fraudulent contracts. They met in the HR boardroom, where a war room of documents, internal reports, and colored charts now covered the walls. "We have to do this right," Amara said. "No witch hunts. Just truth." Carla nodded. "Then we start with the data. 142 rejected transfer requests from qualified minority candidates. 87 of them had degrees or certifications relevant to the roles they applied for. Let's start interviewing them. Privately. One by one." In the following days, Amara and Carla conducted discreet interviews with housekeeping staff, bellboys, kitchen assistants, and administrative temps. The pattern was undeniable. Supervisor Hastings, Director Rollins, and a handful of department heads had created an invisible wall. If your name sounded foreign, your accent was strong, or your skin was darker, your resume ended in a shredder pile. One evening, Amara met with Brighton in his private office. He listened intently as she outlined the findings. "It's not just racism," she said. "It's nepotism, too. Over a dozen vendor contracts went to relatives of executives. Translation, catering, temp staffing. All overpriced, all underqualified." Brighton folded his hands. "We need a full audit. And I want every department head to justify their hiring decisions for the last 5 years." Amara leaned forward. "We should also create an internal mobility platform. Anonymous reviews. Skill-based recruitment." Brighton smiled. "You're not just a liaison anymore. I want you to lead this as our Director of Internal Equity and Multilingual Strategy." The new title came with authority, budget control, and a team. But it also came with enemies. Word of Amara's promotion spread like wildfire. Some congratulated her. Others whispered behind her back. Supervisor Hastings resigned within a week, citing personal reasons. Others, like Ms. Denton from Guest Relations, began a quiet campaign to discredit Amara. Anonymous emails leaked to the press hinted at unqualified diversity hires. Rumors circulated that Amara had used Brighton's sympathy to leapfrog over more experienced staff. A tabloid ran a photo of Amara from 6 years prior in a housekeeper uniform, captioned, "From mop to top, cleaning her way into power." Amara stayed calm. Her mother, a former teacher turned janitor in rural Georgia, had taught her resilience in the face of slander. "If they have to lie to stop you," her mother used to say, "it means you already won." But the pressure was mounting. Online forums filled with anonymous complaints. A few guests even sent complaints asking why a cleaning lady was giving press interviews about corporate reform. Brighton held a press conference to address the smear. "Meridian Crown Hotels believes in merit, vision, and redemption," he said firmly. "Dr. Amara Lewis has demonstrated all three." He then invited Amara to the podium. "When I cleaned the lobby floors," she began, voice steady, "I watched people walk past me as if I didn't exist. Now that I have a nameplate and an office, I'm somehow a threat. Visibility shouldn't be reserved for the privileged. Talent lives everywhere. It's time we started seeing it." The clip went viral. Former employees reached out from around the country, sharing their own stories of being overlooked, silenced, and rejected. Amara created a digital portal named the Invisible Talent Registry, where people could submit their skills and histories, hoping for a second chance. One story in particular hit home: Miguel Soto, a pastry chef from El Salvador who had worked in the hotel's kitchen for 9 years. Despite culinary certifications from 2 countries, he was stuck frosting mini muffins on breakfast buffets. Amara visited the kitchen, met Miguel, and tasted his almond guava torte. Within a week, Miguel was promoted to sous chef de cuisine, and his dessert was added to the hotel's VIP menu. But not everyone was pleased. One afternoon, Amara received a threatening note in her office drawer: "Know your place. One slip, and you're back with the mops." Carla urged her to report it. Brighton offered private security. Amara refused both. "If I start hiding, they win." Instead, she doubled down. She published a public report on internal hiring patterns, naming departments with the most unequal practices. She launched mentorship programs for staff from underrepresented backgrounds. By the end of the quarter, Meridian Crown Hotels reported a 27% increase in internal promotions from frontline roles. Guest satisfaction rose 15%, and international travel blogs praised the cultural fluency of staff interactions. And in the center of it all stood Amara, not as a token, not as an exception, but as proof. Proof that invisibility was never the same as incapability. 6 months had passed since the day Amara Lewis picked up a phone call in Flemish inside the Grand Meridian Hotel's lobby. What began as a minor rule infraction had turned into a corporate reckoning. But more than that, it had set off a chain of change that rippled far beyond her initial promotion. Now Vice President of Global Diversity and Cultural Affairs, Amara worked from an office on the 34th floor, a space with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. But it wasn't the view that kept her grounded, it was the pictures taped beside her monitor. Her mother in her nursing uniform. Her Howard University diploma. A folded flyer from a language workshop she had led during the pilot phase of the hotel's newest internal initiative, Project Luminary. The program was Amara's vision come to life, a proactive system to identify underutilized employees with hidden talents in language, analytics, customer care, and beyond. Across the hotel chain, regional teams used AI-assisted evaluations, mentor feedback, and grassroots nominations to highlight staff ready for bigger things. And now, it was Amara's job to turn that momentum into long-term structural change. In the past half-year, Project Luminary had uncovered 113 employees who, like Amara, were operating far below their qualifications. Among them was Diego Cruz, a bellhop in Miami fluent in Portuguese and market economics, now leading hospitality analytics in Brazil, and Anika Shah, a front desk clerk in Singapore with a background in UX design, who was now head of guest experience for the Southeast Asia region. In the conference room that day, Amara stood beside CEO Charles Brighton as they presented quarterly outcomes to the board. Customer satisfaction scores have increased by 32% globally since we began Luminary, she said, pointing to a graph. Turnover among minority staff has dropped by 48%. Internal promotions of employees from non-traditional backgrounds are up 71%. And the cost savings on external translation services alone are nearing $7 million annually. Brighton nodded. But beyond the metrics, he added, we've unleashed something greater, dignity. Across the boardroom, a hushed silence followed. Then slow, intentional applause. After the presentation, Amara stepped aside to catch her breath. Carla Benson, now head of inclusive HR strategy, approached with a knowing smile. They're finally listening, she said. Amara smiled faintly. Now the harder part begins. Making sure they don't forget. That afternoon, Amara led a training for newly appointed regional directors. Among them were former janitors, receptionists, and line cooks. She stood at the front of the room with a clicker in one hand and resolve in the other. Many of you weren't expected to be here, she began. But here you are. Not because of charity. Because you earned it. Because you have what this industry has been too blind to see. The training focused on cultural fluency, bias intervention, and mentorship pipelines. Amara emphasized sustainable transformation. One success story doesn't break a system. A network of success stories does. And now you're that network. Meanwhile, Thomas Rollins was nowhere near the boardroom. After his termination, a cascade of investigations followed. It was revealed that he had steered over $2.4 million in contracts to shell companies tied to relatives. Legal action was pending. Sarah Hastings, too, had quietly resigned after a series of interviews revealed a deliberate pattern of blocking internal promotions. Amara had made no public statements about either. She didn't need to. Their absence spoke volumes. But not everyone was an adversary. As word spread of the reforms, former cleaning colleagues reached out. Maria, who used to scrub baseboards beside her, was now training to become a facilities manager. Jamal from the loading dock had moved into supply chain coordination after Luminary revealed his logistics experience. The ripple was growing. One night, Amara stayed late finishing a proposal. Carla popped her head in. "You have a visitor," she said, raising an eyebrow. Into the room stepped Mr. Van Doren, the Dutch linguistics professor who had called her that fateful day. "I'm here for a different reason," he said warmly. "Our department at the University of Amsterdam would like to offer you a visiting chair position. 1 semester a year. We want our students to learn not just from your research, but your resilience." Amara's breath caught. It had been her mother's dream to see her teaching. She accepted. Weeks later, Amara stood at a lectern in a classroom half a world away. Behind her were slides on cross-cultural communication. In front of her sat students scribbling notes, some wide-eyed, others teary. "Don't let systems define your ceiling," she said. "Talent is not rare. Opportunity is. Create both." And far below in the hotel kitchens, lobbies, and supply rooms of the world, others were listening too. In a world where appearances often overshadow substance, Amara Lewis's journey reminds us of a truth many have long forgotten: real talent doesn't always wear a title or sit in a corner office. Sometimes, it scrubs floors with humility, waits patiently behind the scenes, and keeps showing up even when no one notices. This story is more than just about injustice, it is about endurance, unseen brilliance, and the quiet strength of those who refuse to be broken by systemic bias. For 6 years, Amara bore the weight of rejection, not because she lacked skill, but because she didn't fit the mold of what power expected. Yet when her moment came, she didn't explode in anger or retreat in fear, she rose with dignity, using intellect as her sword and truth as her shield. What makes this story universal is how deeply it reflects the lives of so many: the overlooked employee, the underestimated single parent, the aging worker with years of wisdom but no seat at the table. It speaks to everyone who has been told, "Wait your turn," or worse, "You don't belong here." And it challenges those in leadership to look again, beyond the resume gaps, beyond skin color or accent, to the real value a person brings. The true lesson isn't just about diversity or equity, though both are vital. It's about recognition, about opening our eyes to the invisible talents around us, and realizing that the best people for the job may not always be the most obvious ones. Amara's victory wasn't just personal, it was systemic. By proving her worth, she held up a mirror to an entire organization, revealing cracks that had long been ignored. In doing so, she lit a path for others to follow, ensuring that talent would no longer hide in utility closets or be buried under someone else's insecurities. So if you're watching this today, whether you're in your first job or approaching retirement, remember this. Your worth isn't defined by your current role, but by your courage to keep growing in silence until someone finally hears your voice. And if you're in a position of power, ask yourself, whose potential am I overlooking today? Sparkles, if this story moved you, take a moment to reflect, then take action. Drop a comment below and share where in the world you're watching from. Have you ever felt like Amara? Or known someone like her? Let's talk about it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another story that sheds light on the extraordinary lives often hidden in plain sight.